Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host Elfin, and today we're diving into a topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention when we talk about PCOS, and that's mental health. Living with PCOS is so much more than managing your periods and hormones. It can affect your entire self and confidence, your energy, and your emotional well being. Joining me today is someone who knows this intersection intimately, our psychologist, Somya, who specializes in mental health care for people living with PCOS. Somya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Alpin. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm glad that we are having this conversation. It's much needed.
So let's start with you. Can you share a little bit about your background and what led you to work specifically with people who have PCOS?
So I started noticing a pattern in my practice where a lot of my female clients would come with issues like depression, anxiety, self-image concerns, and there were not much external stressors that could explain that. After deeper exploration, we came to know that most of them had PCOS. That is when I understood that how overlooked this area is. And also the motivation to work with people with PCOS also comes from my own journey with PCOS. I was diagnosed in 2021, and there were so many concerns that I had at that time, the facial hair, the overweight, uh, and the constant lethargy that I felt, the lack of motivation that I felt. My mental health was at worst. Being a psychologist, when I faced all this, how difficult it must be for other people to cope up. So that motivated me.
That's so powerful, Somya. There's so much of a emotional narrative behind the diagnosis that no one really talks about, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Let's really dive into it. Why is mental health such a big piece of the PCOS puzzle?
That's a great question. First of all, the hormonal imbalance in PCOS, especially the elevated levels of androgen and insulin resistance that directly influence neurotransmitters of our brain, like serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. So our brain is chemically impacted, and there is a sense of emotional burden that is there. Apart from that, the physical changes like the weight gain, the body image that is there because of facial hair, because of acne, because of hair loss. There is so much to process all at once, and it can deeply affect how someone sees themselves and distort their own image, how they see themselves. So, when you are struggling with all these concerns, fertility concerns, body issues, body image issues, people sometimes dismiss all this. So, it becomes difficult to cope.
Yeah, absolutely, Soumya. Like you said, it's not just physical, it becomes quite personal, emotional, and even spiritual for some people.
It can really shake up the sense of identity of a person.
What are some of the most common mental health struggles that you see in your clients with PCOS?
I see a lot of anxiety and depression, first of all, and then there are symptoms like emotional fatigue, chronic stress, poor sleep, poor self-image, and sometimes even disordered eating. That is something that is very, very frequent. My clients say that they feel like they are constantly battling with their own bodies, and sadly, they feel really isolated or maybe misunderstood because even people close to them do not fully understand the impact of all these things happening to them.
Yeah, absolutely. That sense of loneliness and frustration must be so intense, and it must be quite hard to cope with all of this.
Yeah, it really is.
Isn't there also some kind of a loop where poor mental health actually makes PCOS symptoms even worse?
Yeah. Definitely, there is a vicious cycle. Stress increases cortisol levels, which it in turn spikes the insulin resistance, which is a core driver in PCOS. So, lack of sleep, emotional eating, low energy, all this can contribute into worsening of symptoms. So, if you ignore the mental health aspects of it, your physical healing is slow too.
That makes the case even stronger for considering mental health as part of managing your PCOS. So, how can someone start taking care of their mental health if they're living with PCOS?
So, firstly, I always recommend therapy. Although there is no gold standard for any kind of mental health disorder, I use CBT with most of my clients and mindful-based practices because CBT is, an approach where we can deal with anxiety and depression along with other irrational beliefs that they have about their bodies and concerns. Then we have tools like journaling, deep breathing, and mindfulness that help a person in understanding and reflecting onto their own behaviors and thinking about the whole thing. They need to reconnect with body and calm their nervous system down. So deep breathing is one thing which we teach them. Apart from that, it's very important to build a support system. Having friends that can understand where you are coming from and have a sort of unconditional positive regard for yourself and hold space for you. We have online support systems where people with similar struggles come together and help each other in getting through all this. So these are some resources that help. And yeah, and finally giving yourself permission to be free and to rest and to feel everything. You don't have to be strong all the time.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Even giving yourself that grace is an act of healing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely it is.
So, Somya, you mentioned about neurotransmitters. Can you talk a little bit about what that means in the context of PCOS?
Definitely, neurotransmitters do affect our well-being in general, and the three neurotransmitters that I mentioned, serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, they influence the most, and also because they are the ones who are responsible for maintaining or regulating our mood. So what happens is if you have PCOS, your androgen level is rising, and so is the insulin resistance, which causes dopamine production to be dysregulated. So you'll feel that there is a spike in motivation and pleasure, which results into impulsive behavior. You'd notice people signing up for crash course diets or for buying gym memberships just in a second, right? And somehow they lack the motivation to persist throughout the journey. That is because of the dysregulated dopamine that is there in the brain. Next is serotonin. So serotonin's production is decreased and its effect is stunted, which means that the ability to feel joy and happiness is stunted too. So a lot of mood swings, a lot of sadness in the mood is experienced. With GABA, so GABA is responsible for maintaining the calmness in our nature, in our mood, right? And a good quality sleep. So GABA's production is also decreased, which means that the sleep quality is poor and there is always this physical fatigue and lethargy, and the calmness is not there. Are in the mood, the calmness is absent. So that is how there are more neurotransmitters, but these three are the ones which are affected the most because of PCOS.
That's really insightful, Somya. Thank you for sharing that. Somya, so this has been really such an enlightening conversation. And before we wrap up, could you leave our listeners with one message about PCOS and mental health?
Well, I just want to say that you are not flawed. Your struggles are very valid. And with the right support, healing is possible, not just physically, but emotionally as well. You can feel better while dealing with your physical symptoms.
Yeah, that's really beautifully said, Somya. Thank you again for being here. And to everyone listening, thank you. And stay tuned for our next mental health episode on hormones and headspace, how PCOS affects the brain. Remember that you are more than your diagnosis and your mental health definitely matters. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.